Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 303, an intro to lawlessness, part 3. There is only one path to victory. The podcast objectives are establish a baseline for understanding our eventual victory over lawlessness, reveal the only hope we have in this life, and analyze the difference between having lawlessness and doing lawlessness. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. We all have to deal with it. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 5 of our exposition of lawlessness. In today's podcast, we will establish a line of demarcation between those doing lawlessness and those who are eliminating lawlessness from their being. No doubt, this is a critical matter which many within the religious circuit have gotten wrong. This is why they have been deceived into believing they can operate in any of the degrees of lawlessness and yet enter into everlasting life. But alas, this is not true, for we have already proven if you fail to eliminate every degree of lawlessness from your being, everlasting life does not belong to you. For that reason, it is imperative that we establish a line of demarcation on this matter so we all know what side of the line we fall on and why. I will begin with the following interest point to establish a baseline for the remainder of this discussion. Everyone has lawlessness prior to their reception of the set apart spirit of Elohim. The focal objective of the spirit, then, is to empower us to eliminate every degree of lawlessness, a spiritual process more commonly known as transformation, sanctification, and being set apart. To wit, by replacing our degrees of lawlessness with degrees of holiness via the amazingly wonderful spirit of Elohim, who is holy, we are transforming our nature with the intent of becoming a new creation in Yahushua Messiah. Here again, these are matters we have already proven, and thus I am not going to rehash those points, for we have accomplished our remit for this lesson. To wit, we have established the fact that we all have lawlessness. We all have to deal with it. The only hope we have in this life. Now, that said, I must make this one thing clear. Vis-a-vis, having lawlessness is not what matters most. What matters most is what you are doing about it. What matters most is how you deal with it, seeing as it must be dealt with. As in many spiritual cases, there are ultimately two paths you can follow on this wise. Vis-a-vis, you can walk the arduous path required to eliminate every degree of lawlessness you were fated to have at birth, or you can retain them. Needless to say, the masses have chosen to retain their degrees of lawlessness. And in doing so, they have inherited many sorrows for the following reason that many do not consider until it is too late. By retaining your degrees of lawlessness, you are subjected to the poisonous fruit of these degrees. This is why I liken the degrees of lawlessness to spiritual viruses and diseases. It's because each degree has the power to bring about your spiritual death. And that's only after they ruin the life you have been given on this earth. Alas, it's a tragic tale that doesn't get better. It only gets worse. The reason why is sure. It's because those who retain their degrees of lawlessness eventually begin pursuing lawlessness. To wit, they become doers of lawlessness. Here lies the inflection and the problem. Namely, those who are doing lawlessness have made themselves opponents to Elohim. We know this because the devil is the father of all those doing lawlessness. We revealed this in the most recent podcast. This is why the messengers will remove them from the earth during the great distress. For none of the enemies of Elohim will inherit the millennial kingdom. It's a classic non-starter. Therefore, the only hope we have in this life and the life to come is centered on our victory over every degree of lawlessness. It is the only path we can take that ends well. It only takes one. Now, this matter speaks to the difference between having lawlessness and doing lawlessness. To wit, you can have lawlessness without doing lawlessness. Else, who could be saved? I tackled this topic in 2 podcasts from my sin series entitled Believers in Sin Part 1 and Believers in Sin Part 2. These podcasts analyze the conflict between believers and sin while analyzing the difference between having sin and being a sinner. Now, if you have time, I encourage you to listen to these podcasts, which were posted on February 24th and 25th, 2022. More than anything, it's because the difference between having sin and being a sinner is the same difference between having lawlessness and doing lawlessness. Along these lines, there is no neutral position you can take with regards to lawlessness. You're either for it or you're against it. And if you're against it, then you're really against it. You are serious about eliminating lawlessness from your life once and for all. Here lies the key, explicitly, as it pertains to those who try to find some middle ground on lawlessness. It is such a crucial matter that I will offer it as an inflection point. This is one I would advise you to bookmark. The only way to overcome lawlessness is by eliminating every degree. For on this wise, there is no such thing as a partial victory. Here lies the problem, vis-a-vis those who seek to find some middle ground on lawlessness do so because they have encountered a degree they don't want to eliminate. Here again, what these fail to realize is that it doesn't take all 80 degrees of lawlessness to destroy your soul. My dear friends, it only takes one. Not only this, but all the degrees of lawlessness represent a complex spiritual network of deficits and diseases. To wit, They are all connected. They are like a web of deceit, which makes the following inflection point true. Even should you have success in eliminating a fraction of the degrees of lawlessness, the ones which you did not eliminate will eventually compromise the fraction wherein you did succeed, thus eliminating all your victories. Now, I said all of that to make sure you have the right mind and focus concerning the journey we are about to embark on. Vis-a-vis, you must be determined to eliminate every degree of lawlessness we cover in the upcoming months. And remember, should you fail, if you fail, you will eventually lose every battle you may have won. And you'll be sorry you did not heed the warning of this watchman when he told you, between death and the degrees of lawlessness, all it takes is one. Now, here is the final word. Regarding sin, we heard the call to arm ourselves and destroy them all. My dear friends, this is not rocket science. Lawlessness is the great enemy of our souls. Who in their right mind would make a concession with an enemy who is trying to destroy their soul? Who in their right mind would try to coexist with him? We're here because we get it. We're here because we have eyes to see. If we do not eliminate every degree of lawlessness, every one, then we will have no victory. So take my advice and put on the whole armor of Elohim and receive this word of prayer as we follow him and fight. Savior, wherever thy steps I see, dauntless, untired, I follow thee. Oh, let thy hand support me still and lead me to thy holy hill. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on all the lessons you have heard this week and ask the Father to give you clarity on anything you are struggling to receive. And if you are led, please feel free to reach out to me. You can fill out a form on our website and let us know what questions you have. And remember, the only question that can truly hurt you is the one you fail to ask. Last but not least, enjoy the upcoming Shabbat and the weekend, and be ready to get back at it next week as we continue to make our calling and election sure in pursuit of the precious and priceless seal of Elohim. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 303, an Intro to Lawlessness, Part 3. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 304, the 80 Degrees of Lawlessness, Part 1. I will post this podcast on Monday, July 8th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.